Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
Dan, today we're going to do something we've never done before.
It is very unique, is it not?
Today we're going to review a movie that just came out, and or rather do a commentary on a movie that just came out. Today we're going to do a commentary podcast on The Amazing Spider-Man.
It's very exciting. I'm very excited to sort of sit down and watch this film again.
Well, and I am stoked to watch it with you because you and I haven't had long conversations about this film.
We haven't. We've sort of just given our initial thoughts to each other, but we've never really talked scene specifics, so it'll be interesting to get into the nitty-gritty of it.
I also think that the perspective of going through all three Raimi's films in relatively short order and then going straight to this is going to very much inform how we go about this.
Yeah. Because you had made the, not criticism, but observation that this, to you, initially had seemed like just a checklist of things that weren't done in the Raimi films properly or just weren't done at all and put in here.
I'm glad you mentioned that here. Yeah, that is precisely how I felt about it the first time. And may I say, getting some months distance away from it and sitting down and watching it again didn't feel that way as much. And it's going to be fun going through and actually talking about it because I actually think that it's even better than I initially thought when I first saw it. And I liked it the first time, but felt like it was a bit superfluous. And it felt less that this time.
Yeah.
I think part of that also has to do with spending a lot of time with you and learning more about Spider-Man.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah. Because I think I just picked up more on certain things watching it this time where I was like, oh yeah, that is now familiar in a way it wasn't before. Because like, yeah, I knew Spider-Man before, but just everybody listening, for the record, you spend as much time as I've been spending with Dan Torrey, you learn about Spider-Man.
Oh, thank you.
And so, I know more than I did, and I'm like, oh yeah, that is cool. So anyway, I keep thinking of things, and we'll talk about it when we get into it. I want to go on record to say, before we get started on the film, that this is going to be very different from some of our other commentaries in that I've not done a full in-depth analysis on this movie. And every other superhero film that me and Dan or me and Shades or me and anybody else have done commentaries on so far, I've done a review on. And it's been just us kind of sitting down and having fun, and I restate some things and maybe, mention some other stuff. But this one, I've not had that time to sit down and really study it and put together a critical analysis. So my thoughts will not be as fully formed as perhaps you're used to, because I usually do these after I've reviewed something. So anyway, I just want to go on record to say that I might say some things that will change in my head when I finally do a rewind on this a couple years from now and sit down and actually give myself the time to study the thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. And I haven't done a full in-depth critical analysis of this either, so the same goes for me. But
it'll be really interesting, and I thought it still should be done.
For sure. I'm
not going to make this rule that I'm not going to do commentaries on anything I haven't reviewed yet. I think doing it backwards could be interesting also. And I wait 2 years on the critical analysis. I don't want people to have to wait 2 years on these. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get going on this. And if you've never listened to one of our commentary podcasts before, what we do is we talk about the film while watching the film. You can pop in a DVD or a Blu-ray of the film and watch it along with us, or you can listen to this podcast without watching the film, and we'll do our very, very best, might be even harder this time, to give you as much context as possible for what we're seeing as we're going along. This is not just a straight-up commentary. We do talk throughout the entire thing with no big, long blank spaces like you see in some commentaries. So theoretically, you should be able to listen to this in your car or at work or any place you happen to be. And Dan and I are going to go ahead and get started right now. So if you want to listen or watch the film while listening to us, go ahead and rig up your movie, however you have it set up, DVD, Blu-ray, whatever, and get it to where the movie starts, get it to timestamp 0, and hit pause. Don't put it on the menu. And just get it to the movie, hit pause, and then hit play whenever we get ready to start. Dan, how many times have you seen this?
I've seen it probably about 4 times now. I saw it twice in theaters, and I think I've seen it twice since I got it on DVD. I got it the day it came out, and I think I've watched it twice since then.
This viewing will only be my third.
Interesting.
I just watched it again. I watched it in the theater one time, and I just watched it again last night in preparation for this.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I'll do my best. This is going to be interesting. So anyway, here we go. Everybody, please press play on your DVD or Blu-ray right now.
And here we go.
Oh, this looks familiar.
Columbia.
So far, so good.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about the score as the opening titles come through, because that's what we're going to be hearing. You have made no bones about the fact that you dislike the score in this film immensely, right?
I dislike the score. Now, again, like pretty much everything else, I didn't have as many problems with it the second time around.
Mm-hmm.
There were things that I think maybe I blew out of proportion a little bit. And I'm not saying that because people criticize me saying I didn't like the score. I've heard other people say that too.
Right, yeah.
It's just, trying to look at it objectively, I didn't have as many problems with it the second time around. And I will point out some places, there are still a lot of places that I feel like the score is just inappropriate for the scene.
Yeah.
Maybe not to the degree I thought. I will say this, though. These opening titles are really generic.
Yes, they are.
Now, granted, we don't have the big, long opening like we do, at the beginning of the other ones.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's definitely a far cry from the Raimi films. As we were saying before, it got a check off the list.
This film was scored by
Horner, wasn't it? James Horner?
Yeah, who I think usually does better work than this.
I've heard his name before, but I can't recall what films he's done. Do you have any idea? Because I've probably seen films that he's done
forever, and
yeah, I thought so.
He scored Field of Dreams, dude.
Oh, okay.
And he scored, I know where I know him from the most. I'm sorry, I'm looking him up right now. He scored Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, which is a wonderful soundtrack.
Oh, okay, cool.
He also did the modern Zorro films, which I remember having decent soundtracks. I mean, he usually does decent stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. American Tail and Land Before Time. My goodness.
Wow.
And you remember me one time when you and I were talking, Dan, making fun of an early '90s film called "We're Back: A Dinosaur Story"?
Oh yes.
Yeah, he scored that.
That's awesome.
Here's the thing: he doesn't seem to have done much, if any, superhero, and maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main hero title theme for this kind of suits the tone of the film pretty well. But other than that, I can't really think of any pieces from this film that are all that memorable, whereas from the Raimi films, a lot of people say that score isn't catchy or hummable, but I think the theme for the Raimi films is really well done, and it's really catchy. It always stuck in my head, even as a kid when I didn't pay attention to things like this, the score or anything. It just stuck in my head.
I think maybe he just wasn't the right guy for this.
Yeah.
But, again, that could just be me. So this film opens with messing with our expectations a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Where Webb is trying to make us think for a minute that his parents have ran out on him in the middle of a game of hide and seek. Which in the theater really bugged me at first, because I thought maybe that's what they were going to do, and I was like, that would be the worst thing ever.
Yeah. I sort of really liked that opening scene where it was foreshadowing a lot of things that will happen later on in the film, where he's sort of looking for his father, he can't find him, and then he puts his glasses on, sort of discovering something connected to his father from the past. I thought it was a really nice scene foreshadowing what we'll see for the rest of the film. Because Webb said that this film is all about a boy who went looking for his father and found himself.
Yeah, I buy that.
Yeah.
I like that opening scene, while messing with our expectations, does lead right into a scene where he does lose his parents.
Exactly, yeah.
And that it's not... What's also kind of neat is that, I just thought of this, this is not your usual superhero origin story in that it opens with the guy's parents getting killed, and then flash forward, he figures out how to become a superhero. He loses two fathers.
Yeah.
In different ways.
Yeah, I mean, he loses. We'll get to how effective making the father figures that are present in this film real figures for Peter to aspire to. But in a sense, throughout this film, he's going to lose his father, Uncle Ben, Kurt Connors, and Captain Stacy, who in the comics and in here are presented as potential surrogate fathers for him after Richard Parker leaves.
Yeah, which turns it into a coming-of-age story times 4.
Exactly.
Because he's got all these men in his life that all mean something to him, and some of them affect him more positively than others.
And he's responsible for all of them dying or leaving him.
Right, yeah, that's right. That's all really interesting.
It is really interesting.
I like that Webb's go-to backstory for this movie and the way he separates it from what we've seen before is, let's have Peter Parker actually have to deal with his parents leaving him right away. And he's got life in his life. He's got loss in his life even before Uncle Ben leaving. The other thing I like about it too is that I think that it gives him a much better reason for being so understated and kind of a loner.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. It makes him being a social outcast make a lot of sense. And I think we're actually talking over this scene with Flash here.
And when we need to talk about Flash.
We do. But I think the choice of making him a modern social outcast rather than the 60s portrayal of a comic book portrayal of a nerd who's also a social outcast is really smart. Because it's a little bit more contemporary.
Right. Yeah, it's more believable now. Because after all, we live in a day and age where being a nerd and a geek isn't as big of a problem as it used to be.
Right, exactly.
And so he's got to be a different sort of nerd. Where it's just that he can't relate to people.
Exactly. It's a social thing rather than the things that he's interested in.
So I could not believe how great of a portrayal of Flash Thompson we got in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Nor could I believe that he gets somewhat of an arc.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we get foreshadowed with Flash here in the little scenes we get from him. Every bit of characterization that I love with him that happens later on in, the stuff with the Hobgoblin in the 80s and the current stuff with Remender and the Venom stuff where he's this tortured guy that bullying is his way out and his sort of outlet for his rage and stuff. It's really nuanced. The guy who gave the performance here, I really enjoyed him.
They need to bring him back. They need to keep moving forward with that character. And if the series is a long series, they need to allow him to become a major part of the supporting cast. Yeah, because not only did they cast him right, but you get from him that there is something going on at home and he's overcompensating.
Exactly.
And that's what that character's about, and we never have to see it. You just get that, especially when we get to that point later on where he actually has major sympathy for Peter losing his uncle. And you're like, well, he's got to have something going on at home.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I don't know if you saw this, but there was an interview with him after the film had come out, and they were like, oh, Sony's talking about a Venom spin-off movie. Are you aware with the current situation of Flash right now? And he said, yes, I am. I'm very aware. And they're like, so has Sony talked to you about that at all? And he said, we'll talk in a few years.
Whoa. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
How bad do you want that?
I want it so bad. Flash is my favorite Venom, for those who don't know, so I would be ecstatic to see him as the Venom on screen.
I will never say Flash is my favorite Venom because comparing him to Eddie Brock is apples and oranges. Because at that point you're talking about whether or not you prefer Venom as a hero or a villain.
Right, yeah.
If you had to have a Venom solo film, at this point it's got to be Flash Thompson because Remender finally gave us a reason to have a Venom solo anything.
Right, yeah, for sure.
So, don't give Eddie Brock his own movie. That'd be stupid.
Oh, yeah.
Let Eddie Brock be a villain and then give him the symbiote.
Yeah, exactly. And it would give much more precedent for these movies to be connected and have them do a Avengers-style team-up with Venom and Spider-Man coming together to fight a bigger threat called, I don't know, maybe Carnage? Who knows?
What? That's the, I don't know. That's the maximum that I think anybody should ever go with. No. So, Dan, I want to talk about this cast because if you had told me when I was a kid, and I'm going to mention this because these are both actors that I knew when I was a kid, if you were to tell me that I was ever going to see a Spider-Man film that included Sally Field and Martin Sheen, I would have never believed it.
Yeah, you would have laughed at me if I told you that.
I would have never believed that those two. Well, if it was 10 years ago, you would have been too young to probably talk to me. But but I'm just saying that like I never would have bought it.
Oh no, I mean
that these actors would even agree to be in something like this.
And I've heard interviews with both of them. They loved playing it, which is great.
Well, you can tell they're just eating up every scene they're in. Now, it's not fair to say that about Martin Sheen because, of course, he was in Spawn.
Yeah.
But he was the bad guy. He was Jason Wynn. He was the villain in Spawn.
Oh, interesting.
And pretty sure that's Martin Sheen. He looks a lot different now because he's older. But
cool.
But of course, it's he was willing to do a superhero film back then, so I guess it's weird to say that, but I still never would have expected him to be Uncle Ben,
right, and he's the spitting image of him, isn't he? Just looks
I think so too. I think part of the thing too is I just never expected to grow up and see these actors old.
Right, yeah. That's true. So they must look very different to how you perceive them initially, right?
Yeah. That was Martin Sheen. He looks so different now.
Yeah, I'd imagine, I don't know if he was a little bit chubby when he took this role, but he's definitely put, as most old men do, they put on a little bit of weight when they get older, but it was perfect for the Uncle Ben here, because he's the spitting image of Ditco, Uncle Ben.
There is something done with this film that is really subtle for fans, and I really appreciate it. And that is taking major bits that in the comics were always a huge part of Spider-Man and setting them up, but not going too far with them yet.
Yeah.
And the two big things, of course, are Peter Parker being a photographer and Oscorp.
Yes.
And how great is it that we set up Oscorp before we ever even meet Norman Osborn?
I love that. Or even Harry, too.
Not to include too many characters in this film and to really make this about what they want to make it about and not just, knocking all the bricks down,
Yeah, this one has the benefit of knowing that it's going to be a franchise.
Precisely.
Whereas the Raimi films didn't. Raimi knew that he was going to make a Spider-Man movie, so he kind of put everything that he wanted to say or do in that first one, and then thankfully he had enough to make a better film with two.
Yeah.
But this one has the benefit of being able to, not have to do Spider-Man's arch enemy in the first movie, which is great. Save Goblin for later. It'll matter more later anyway.
I think this is also great for fans because a lot of us are used to Lizard being this early.
Right, yeah, and in the comics, it's when Green Goblin shows up, if you look at the history of Spider-Man, Green Goblin actually doesn't show up very often. But when he does show up, it's a big deal, And
they're really treating it like that with this. We don't even get to see Osborne in this, but his tentacles are everywhere.
Right, I love that. See, the thing with the goblins, too, that has always been in the comics is it's always a mystery behind who's in the mask. And they didn't do it like Spectacular Spider-Man where they threw you a red herring and you thought that maybe for a second it wasn't Osborn under the mask.
Right.
They say here, okay, obviously we're going to use Norman Osborn. Everyone knows that. But they're going to make a new mystery out of it. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and I like the idea of his parents having worked for Oscorp.
Exactly. It makes a lot of sense for them to go there. And I'm kind of surprised that it wasn't like that in the comics when they sort of when they did it that way. But
here's an irritating little nitpick.
Yeah.
When Uncle Ben looks at the picture on the computer of what is that, the debate team, or I forget what she's on, but he sees Gwen there and says she's pretty and just assumes that that's this girl that Peter is interested in, but she's not the only girl in the photo.
Yeah,
there's a girl right under her. I don't understand that.
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
It is funny, though, later when he says, "Oh, you're the girl on his computer.
Yeah.
I'm his probation officer."
Yeah. I really liked that Uncle Ben has a down-to-earth handyman kind of feel to him in here. You know, the other film did, but I think we get to know Uncle Ben a little bit more in this film than we did.
He gets a great deal more screen time.
Yeah.
And they do things with that screen time.
Yeah, I like that I think blue collar is the word, right? He's a blue collar kind of guy, whereas Peter's not that at all. And I like that sort of juxtaposition.
We talked a lot in the other films about how much we liked that Uncle Ben and that Aunt May, and I still do, and this doesn't change that for me, but I do love that this film is not obsessed with the fact that it's a superhero movie. Oh. And that allows Peter to spend some time with his aunt and uncle, and for us to really get a sense of what that relationship is like. It's not as stereotypical as I felt like theirs kind of was in the original.
Right.
Where you had Uncle Ben saying things like, don't start up with me, and like, respect your elders. He had that very much that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And I mean, they touch on the whole "you're not my father" thing there, because he comes out and says that, and I like that. But here, it's very much like, we're your parents, but we're not your parents because you knew your parents up till you were like 7.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, it's a very awkward situation. Like, they love each other and they get along, but what I like is, in an age where we're so obsessed with having characters that we can relate to, we're given a situation that most of us can't immediately relate to, and that makes it interesting.
Exactly. And I think the way he's raised, like you were talking about how awkward his relationship with Aunt May and Uncle Ben is, and I think that informs the way he socializes with people too. Which is very realistic, because when you see him socializing with Aunt May and Uncle Ben, like you said, you can tell they love each other, but there's not very many words spoken between them.
You don't need them.
Right, exactly. And that's the way he sort of treats other people too. Like, he's very closed off. He doesn't really speak to them too much, and it's very realistic because you act the way you're raised.
I think it would be fair to say that this is a more thoughtful film.
Oh yeah, it definitely
than Raimi's original in the way that it handles interpersonal relationships.
And that's what I love about it, because that's what Spider-Man is all about. I think they nailed that stuff really well, and for me at least, that's almost enough to make a Spider-Man film that's worth watching.
Absolutely, yeah. I think some of the comic book stuff actually doesn't work as well as the personal, emotional stuff.
Right.
And I think I don't know much about Mark Webb, but it seems like we've got a director there that's what he's about. He's not about making this big comic book film.
Right. He had done 500 Days of Summer, which I haven't seen in its entirety, but it's the same sort of film as this, just with the superhero stuff taken out. It's like about two kids that are dating, and the troubles and stuff that happens in a relationship in high school. So I think it was a great pick, because while Raimi got some of Spider-Man right, like, I think that he had a lot of ideas that worked for the adaptations that he was doing, but he really didn't nail the relationship stuff at all, which is so important to what I love about Spider-Man and what makes it work so well as a popular concept. Like, that's one of the reasons why it was so popular in the first place.
When I did my rewind on the original Spider-Man, I did it in this odd format, which is outdated now, where I basically went through the film and said, here are the things that the new film should avoid doing or do in a different way. And one of the things I said was, it needs to have much more of an emphasis on Peter Parker doing science stuff. Mm-hmm. And this film not only achieves that, but it gives us a better reason than I think we've ever had in any medium at all for Peter Parker to be good at science.
Yeah.
Part of it is genetic, and I freaking love that.
Yeah, me too.
I love it. Because the film is about genetics. I mean, if you think about it, thematically, we've got this guy becoming a lizard creature, we've got Peter Parker developing spider powers, all of that is related because his parents knew the guy that becomes the lizard creature, and they were friends, and he becomes Peter's mentor.
Yeah.
It's all about genetics, and guess what? He only knew his father for the first 7 years of his life, and you have to assume that part of the reason that he's good at this science stuff is just because it's built into his chemical makeup.
Yeah, it's a nature versus nurture thing, right? I mean, you have the thing that he was born being good at, which is the science stuff, and he could use that for his own personal gain. But then you have the stuff that Uncle Ben taught him about being responsible and caring for other people, and that's what drives him to be Spider-Man.
And it's not that his father was evil or wouldn't have ever told him that, but it's a bigger deal for Ben because he's got that much more simple, like hard working man mentality.
Right, exactly. He looks at it in more of an absolute sense. Where I feel like Richard Parker might have looked at it, with a little bit more leeway.
Here we get into what I think is the first big plot problem with the film.
Yeah.
And that is, I don't, and you know me, I always complain about big story conveniences, and this is a big one. In a film that has, let's see, how far are we in? In the first 20 minutes, has already got me thinking it's very, very smart in how it's pacing itself, and when it's giving me information, immediately discredits itself by having a dude in a hallway drop a piece of paper that leads Peter Parker to the one major place in all of Oscorp that his parents had the most to do with.
Yeah, that's very true.
Big problem.
You had talked about when we had said, we talked about the film a little bit before we had done this and hadn't really said much else. One of the things I remember you saying is, one of the things that you didn't really care for was this movie treated Spider-Man as a little bit more of a grandiose idea than it really is, with everything being so interconnected and almost feeling like a conspiracy.
Yeah, and again, on second viewing, I have that problem slightly less than I did before, where now I feel like it's not so much that Spider-Man is treated as like too big of like a fate idea, although it is. Mm-hmm. But it's more that it doesn't convince me that it's warranted.
Right.
It's the way it goes about it. There are too many conveniences of why characters are like why characters know each other when they do, and why they're all connected. The thing is, this is not a small town.
No,
this is Queens.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll say this now. I was going to save this, but I'm afraid I'll forget, and this is probably the best place anyway. Okay, so you've got Gwen Stacy,
mm-hmm.
who Peter and her obviously had met before because they went to school together, but they didn't really know each other. Yeah. So we see the place where they first really meet and seem interested in each other, and it's not for any reason other than they're in the same place, and he, stands up against Flash Thompson, basically. Mm-hmm. And so this girl that he just meets, really, and starts getting interested in, just happens to be the main intern at Oscorp for the guy that was best friends with his parents that will turn into a lizard creature because of their research.
Yeah, that's very true. It's all very convenient.
So that makes it far more of a fate kind of thing than you want Spider-Man to be. You don't want Spider-Man to be a destiny kind of idea, because responsibility is a choice, and Spider-Man's all about responsibility. So, this idea that he's like fated to be Spider-Man because of their research and stuff, I don't know that the movie is trying to make that a fate thing, but because it orchestrates things in such a convenient way, and I think that I was extrapolating that too much when I first saw it. Mm-hmm. Now I think that it's on accident because they just didn't know how to make everything happen when they wanted it to. I don't see why Peter and Gwen couldn't have already been dating by the time the movie began.
Yeah, I mean that.
No good reason.
I kind of like the scenes where. I mean, I don't know. I really liked the fact that we got the scenes of him asking her around and stuff because I thought.
No, I like that too, but we need a better reason for them meeting. Like they do when she's so interconnected to the rest of his life already. Mm-hmm. Given, well, she's not really, but I just mean, given, I almost said Reese Evans, Doc Connors, yeah. I don't know, it's too convenient to me that she just happens to work for that guy.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then it becomes even more convenient that she's the daughter of the man that will lead the big manhunt against Spider-Man.
Yeah, that is true.
Everybody in this movie is in a little bubble in Queens.
That is true.
So only 25 minutes in, I've now articulated my biggest complaint of the whole film, and will endeavor not to repeat it over and over again. Yeah. That's really my big beef with it.
Mm-hmm. I think they might be heading in a direction where the fate thing's going to become a little bit more prevalent, because...
As long as it's... I mean, I can be okay with that, but they have to make me okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I think they're going to end up doing by the end of this this trilogy is, because we get so many hints to the fact that Peter's dad was working with spiders were an object of interest to him, that I think we're going to end up with a thing by the end where it's going to be similar to the Bruce Banner thing in the original Hulk movie, where Peter Parker has spider DNA in him, and the spider bite sort of unlocks that in his genetic makeup because his dad put it there.
That again could be made to work for me,
yeah.
But I don't like that the way he winds up there is a completely arbitrary thing.
Mm-hmm.
He just finds a piece of paper. I mean, the only way that would work is if that guy did it on purpose, and I doubt that that's what they'll do.
Right.
Well, you see what I'm saying? So, I mean, like, him getting there. I mean, it could be that his father, meant to do it himself and that he just wound up there on accident. I don't like that.
Yeah. So,
too easy.
So what do you think of this scene?
It's weird. I think it's meant to be weird.
I thought it was very obvious they were playing up the fact that he was he was acting like he was high on marijuana.
Yeah. It's funny that he starts getting these, like exhibiting these attributes of spiders, kind of.
Yeah.
Where you have that weird. We talked over. You have that odd, I think, kind of slapsticky scene on the train.
Yeah, and I was gonna mention something about that I thought was cool when.
Go ahead.
When we were talking about the Gwen Stacy stuff, but there was a little part where he was sleeping and his vision kept flashing, and they panned to the skateboard, and you could for a second see the spider logo on the skateboard when he flashed his vision. I thought it was cool. You alright?
Yeah. I think I swallowed something weird.
Oh man.
I mean, wrong. I didn't swallow anything weird. I'm just drinking Mountain Dew, but I...
Would a spider bite have web protruding from it? And
it might if the spider is still attached to it. I don't know, actually. That doesn't make any sense, does it?
Yeah, I just didn't know that spider bites worked that way.
Maybe they do, and I just don't know. But I remember seeing the trailers for this in the theater going, well, then that's weird. Why does he have webbing in his... And isn't it ironic, too, that the portrayal that we get with webbing stuck in his skin doesn't have organic webbing in the powers?
I had initially thought when I saw trailers that he was going to have the webbing thing in him, and then the web shooters were going to be the thing that extracts them from his body. But it didn't end up going in that direction.
So in a movie where I don't like the soundtrack, I'm surprised that I like every choice of popular music in the whole film.
I think that... speaks to the fact that Mark Webb directed a lot of music videos before.
Oh, okay. It all works.
Yeah. So that's probably why. This is probably a good time to mention this. I was going to mention this when the film had started, but I didn't get a chance to.
Hold on, I got to ask you a question.
Sure.
Does he have math equations on his skateboards?
Yes, he does.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This kid, he's so unusual.
Yeah.
That's what I really like about him, is that I'm like, okay, I'm watching this familiar character, Peter Parker, but he's surprising me all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, that's cool.
Just that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say about Garfield's performance, because I had seen an interview with, I don't think it was Garfield himself, but I think it was someone else who had worked on the film and worked with him. They were saying that the way Garfield approached this performance-wise was initially, like, before Peter Parker has this whole character arc, learning that great power comes great responsibility and all that, he had his performance be very twitchy and nervous and like a guy that's out of his skin, obviously. That he's not comfortable in his own skin, obviously. That's indicative of the early scenes, you can tell.
Yay for the glasses, by the way.
Yeah, just by how awkward he is. And then he said that by the end of the film, he gets more and more focused as Peter Parker learns who he is. And by the end of the film, he's not twitching or being awkward at all.
Wow.
Isn't that really interesting?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, they got a thoughtful kid for a thoughtful film.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Sure.
Let me bring this up real quick. One of my other problems with the film, though it's much more minor than the everybody meets in a very coincidental sort of fashion, is that I don't buy how nonchalant everyone is about the obviously supernatural abilities Peter Parker has.
Yeah.
The problem I had with the first film, and this one, believe it or not, has it worse. I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, weird enough that nobody was calling his aunt and uncle in the first film and doing governmental research on a guy that somehow or rather shoots stuff out of his arm and then gets like a tray at the cafeteria stuck in a door. But here he breaks a backboard,
a sink,
he breaks the door,
he breaks
to his house.
He breaks the field goal at the football stadium as well. Nobody
is investigating this. He's doing all of and there's always a witness.
Yeah, they definitely don't let as many people know that he's Spider-Man as there should be. Like, everyone should know.
Well, at the very least, people should be asking more questions than they do.
Right.
And that's what bugs me about it. Really, he palms a basketball, nobody can get it off his hand, and then he goes and breaks a backboard. That's suspicious behavior, you know? For sure. They should be looking into this more than just, he accidentally broke public property and he gets community service instead of expelled. I don't buy it.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, it's a testament to the film because more of it is working on a believable level to me, where I'm buying the things that are happening in this universe, that when I see things like that, it takes me out too much.
Yeah, for sure, I agree.
Raimi's movie was a little bit more of a heightened reality, so I could buy it more there than I can here. That's the problem, is that this reality doesn't feel as heightened.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's
much more grounded in science fiction.
Yeah, and I actually like that about it quite a bit.
Oh, God, me too. Yeah, but that's why I can make that criticism of it.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, I was just going to talk about the scene that we're in now with Kurt Connors. This is sort of an introduction to us, and we had watched the deleted scenes before, me and you both, before we started this.
We watched it together. We should have recorded a commentary of that.
Yeah, we should have, because I think that it's a big mistake to introduce Kurt Connors, have his introduction be without his family present at all. And then to cut to the scenes that we get with his family out of the film. He seems like a guy that doesn't have a personal life other than his work. And there's a great story parallel in one of the deleted scenes with Billy that would have worked really well in this film. I don't know. I just think it's really unfortunate that
the story parallel is that we see him tell his son that he's going to go away for a while on a business trip.
Right, like Peter.
Just like happened with Peter and guess what? The kid's about the same age. It's wonderful, and it is a crime that they cut that out of the movie.
Oh, yes.
An absolute crime. Especially because, as far as we can tell looking at these scenes, he lives alone in a very large house.
Yeah.
And it's a bit disturbing, really. Not that it's, wrong for a guy like him to have a big house and not have a family, but there's just something, he seems, very alone, and it's easy to extrapolate that part of the reason that he goes bad with the lizard DNA and everything maybe is because he's lonely, but that's not it at all.
No, not at all.
It's also very odd, and again, I don't want to make this all about just us being Spider-Man fans, and so we know that Doc Connors is supposed to have a family.
Yeah.
It's very strange, even if you don't know that. Watching a scene where he's talking with Peter Parker and you hear kids playing what sounds like in the backyard.
Yeah, for sure.
Unless they're just next door, but I mean, you wonder about it.
Yeah, exactly.
I wondered about it.
I just thought it was sort of, like you were saying, sort of strange to see him. I mean, maybe that's sort of indicative of, the Dr. Frankenstein archetype, the scientist who oversteps his boundaries. That they typically live in large castles, living alone, doing experiments and stuff. Maybe that's what they were going for, cutting it out and stuff. But I don't know. It's just very odd to see a guy with that little of a personal life, really.
Yeah, because I don't understand why he's so sensitive about not having an arm.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm not unsympathetic to the fact that, sure, anybody who had an arm and loses it, that sucks.
Yeah.
But one of the things that always made Doc Connors more of a likable villain in the comics from his very inception was that he has a wife and children, and that missing an appendage makes life harder for him. And he's got a family to provide for. I don't know. I guess maybe this is odd, but I just feel like it would be weirder and harder to live with a handicap like that if you had, a family.
Right. It's almost like he's not obsessive enough before he gets the lizard DNA if he doesn't have a family and stuff,
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I like how he, doesn't complain about it, and how he actually, immediately draws attention to it with the tour group,
right, exactly.
Making a joke out of it, where he says, oh, and if you're wondering I'm a southpaw, that's funny. But again, that could just be overcompensation. It still is a big deal for him.
Yes, for sure. But you get the feeling that he's at least comfortable in his own skin, I don't know. This is a great scene between Peter and Uncle Ben. Sort of talking about the little everyday responsibilities that one should take and be a good person.
If only we all had parents like this guy.
I know, right? See, the thing about Uncle Ben is he's such a perfect parent, but he's written in such a way where he doesn't come off like a perfect archetypical parent either, No,
I don't think so. And here he really isn't.
Right. But he's doing the right thing for Peter. Like, he does this for him, puts him in an awkward situation, and look he gets a girlfriend out of it.
Yeah. We talked over it, and I didn't think to mention it earlier, but I should have. I think one of the best moments of the entire film is that early scene where they're in his bedroom, and he says to Uncle Ben, "You're a really good father."
Yes, love that.
It makes him sympathetic, but what it also does I love what Martin Sheen does in that scene, the look of pride on his face.
Yeah. For sure.
I noticed that this time in a way I didn't in the theater, and it hit me in just the right place.
The performances in this movie all around are just very nuanced and very well done.
And may I say, unlike the Raimi films, not a bad casting in the house, and also not a bad performance in the house.
Oh, no. Definitely not. I think without Garfield and Emma Stone in these roles, I don't think the scenes that we're watching right now, the types of scenes, because there's a few of them, I don't think they would work as well. We're having them sort of babble at each other very awkwardly.
Just like we did with the Raimi films.
Yes, but they make it so
here.
Believable and so authentic.
This is one of those places where I felt like you said, I mentioned with going down a checklist, because it's like okay, we're gonna prove to Raimi that you can do awkward scenes with actors playing characters that aren't really saying anything and make it charming. But it's not charming because the writing there is so good. It's charming because we already like these characters for other reasons.
Right, exactly.
By the way, I've got to buy this song and put it on my iPod.
Yeah, it's great.
Whatever this song is, it's lovely.
Yeah, and I love this skateboarding scene because it gives us an origin for Peter thinking about swinging on things.
How cool.
And
also, I didn't think about this before, but this idea of being horizontal on a flat surface.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he gets that feeling being up on a board, up on a curved surface, up on a wall.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's
giving Spider-Man a skateboard is inspired.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until just now. That is inspired.
Yeah, that was Garfield's idea, too.
Oh, wow. Was it?
Yeah, he was the one that pushed for that and wanted it to be in the film. Because he's a skateboarder himself in real life. I think
Clearly.
Most of the scenes that are here are actually him.
This guy.
Yeah, I fell in love with Garfield as Peter Parker after seeing this movie.
Starting to think maybe that's an underrated actor.
Yeah.
Wow, that guy. I'm just made to hear that you say that the skateboard was his idea.
Yes, it was.
Because I think that's brilliant now that I actually think about it. Oh,
I didn't even think of it in that way either. That's I got to give you credit, man. That is a brilliant idea.
Okay, Dan, I got another irritating nitpick for you.
Sure.
If we are not allowed to put this device in production because somebody might weaponize it, why is it on?
And why
does it have steam and stuff coming out of it?
Yeah. It is very weird. See, when you look at this movie from a plot point of view and like just the way the narrative fits together from event to event, it doesn't hold together as well. But like I was saying before, I think the personal stuff and the performances definitely outweigh it. I definitely think.
Right. I just wish we had some better plotting.
Yeah, for sure, and I hope they remedied that with the second movie. I hope it's just them sort of growing pains of getting everything into place that they need to. And then we can get a truly spectacular, hopefully, film.
With Orsi and Kurtzman writing, I wonder about it.
Yeah.
Because those guys can plot well, and they also can do character stuff well, and then there are films they've written that don't do either very well. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Movies, right?
Yeah, but what I've heard mostly about the Transformers films is that is that a lot of their writing gets rewritten.
Oh, okay.
So you're not really seeing an Orsi Kurtzman script when you get to the end of it.
Oh, I see.
That
puts my fears to rest a little bit.
That's what I've read. Yeah, but it doesn't put my fears to rest because you've got Sony being way too hands-on with these movies. So with them writing, there's every chance that what'll happen with this will happen there, where they just rip stuff out.
Yeah.
And remember, famously, Sony didn't like this movie.
That's really strange.
Yes, it was too nuanced and subtle and made you think too much. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I don't want to say this movie really is really deep and makes you think that hard so much as just it makes you like these people.
The characterizations are deep.
Makes you like these people.
Yeah.
And deep in the sense that they feel like real people and not stereotypes or archetypes.
Yeah, and that's indicative of Spider-Man as a concept, right? I mean, Spider-Man's never been a Batman where it's all about nuanced psychology or anything. It's always been about people and the choices they make and how those choices affect their lives, right? So, I think it nails the concept and what Spider-Man has been since its inception perfectly. I don't really need a big, grandiose psychological exploration of this character. I like the coming-of-age stuff just as much.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a character study so much as just we believe these people are, these people. And they feel like real people. And I think in this film, these people all feel like real people. I'm going to say something I'm very surprised to say now that I've seen this a couple times. When I saw it the first time, I think I was influenced a bit by the trailers and stuff, and I felt like the advertising for this film was trying to make it seem like more of a brooding film than it really is.
Mm-hmm.
You have very understated color tones in this movie. It is not a real bright color palette like we had with the original.
Right.
Everything about this is understated until you get to the third act with the action stuff. And I think that is all about trying to, mirror I think that it's understated because the character's understated.
Oh, yeah.
Not because the film is trying to be all dark and brooding and heavy. And what I'm going to say that I'm surprised I'm saying now is there might be a couple of action scenes and, like, violent things that will make a parent cringe, but for the most part, this is a family film.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, and the fact that a lot of people complained that, a lot of the action scenes take place at night, but the kid goes to school. It makes sense for them to all take place at night,
Yeah, and again, I don't think it's at night because it's trying to be a dark and brooding film.
Right, exactly.
If it was, I just don't think that we'd have all this, like, believable father-son stuff.
No, for sure. And that's one thing I kind of wanted to mention while we were seeing that scene with Uncle Ben and Peter fighting. I think there's something that got cut out and was lost in translation there a little bit, because I don't necessarily buy that Peter would get that angry at Uncle Ben if his parents had died in a plane crash like he supposedly found on the computer and believed that.
Oh.
Because it's not really their fault that it's not really his father's fault that he left and died in a plane crash. He probably would have come back eventually. He knows where he is.
That's a great point.
I mean, he knows where he is. He's 6 feet under if he believes that.
Yeah, good point. But, like, if you blink, you miss the plane crash thing.
Right. Yeah, I think...
I think I
just in
blinked the
computer
first time.
montage stuff, they definitely changed it.
Wow. So you're saying that's not even a part of the story anymore?
No, I think...
That they should have taken it out of that montage.
Right. I think Peter's father left and there was more of an ambiguity to it, and I think there was going to be a different explanation for it by the end of this film. Maybe they decided to stretch it out for a longer time.
Maybe they just decided not to tell us what he... Or maybe he has no idea. Maybe they left, never came back, and he just doesn't know where they are.
Right, exactly.
But that's better.
Yeah, I
think. I mean, I like that we don't know if they're alive or not.
Right, yeah, for sure.
Because frankly, that's what it was in the comics, at least in the 90s when they brought him in.
Right, they did.
Where forever he didn't know. By the way, I just gotta say for a second, that guy at the convenience store, what a jerk.
Yeah, and I was going to mention something about the burglar too. I think it's a very interesting choice that he doesn't catch the burglar again and encounter him. Do you want to place bets on which villain he's going to be?
Who do you think?
I don't know, but I have.
But you think he'll come back and be a villain?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I was thinking the star tattoo. Maybe that's some sort of significance to as.
Maybe so. That's yeah, because of course they make a big deal out of it. I like that there's no possible way that Sandman was involved this time. I really like that it. By the way, I like that it was an obvious accident.
Yes, I did.
And that we see it all happen right in scene, so there's no going back and retconning it.
Yes.
And it is very, very different from... Now, I don't know the Ultimate origin very well, but at least from everything I've ever seen, it's very different for Peter not to track down and find the killer right away.
Right. I think in Ultimate he found him pretty much right away, but I haven't read the first volume of Ultimate in a while, so don't take me 100% on that. Let's see. I'm trying to think what other changes they made in the Ultimate one. Obviously, the big change that they incorporated here was the getting to know Uncle Ben before you kill him off, and that gives you such a great emotional weight, when you know who he is and you understand why he matters to Peter so much. Instead of him being a plot device for him becoming Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it doesn't come off like a plot device.
No, not at all. I love that. See, this is where we get the nuance with Flash's character here. There's good in him, right here, where he tries to comfort Peter.
And this early.
Yes.
In the film. 50 minutes in, we've already got this. And did anybody think that, like, Flash Thompson was going to be a thing?
No.
In this? I mean, fantastic.
I didn't even realize that he would be in as much as the film as he was. I thought he was going to be in the opening scene where he's beating up that kid, and then the basketball scene, that was it. See, I love the way Garfield plays that. He just doesn't look like he's comfortable with a girl touching him,
Yeah. One of the things that's a little tough for me about this film is that I actually think, dare I say, that the first half is better than the second half.
I'd say so, too. Most of my problems come in when Doc Connors starts doing lizard things.
When Peter puts the costume on and starts doing Spider-Man stuff, I find myself missing the character stuff toward the beginning. And it's not that it all just goes away and turns into a typical superhero fair kind of story, but I almost liked this movie more before it became a comic book film, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
It's really weird. I was enjoying this on a very different sort of level. We'll talk about this at the end, but let me just tag this here and then we'll come back to it later.
Yeah.
I think that the scope with the lizard plan and everything is too big.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
For a film this grounded, you mean?
Well, for a film that started off kind of understated, I thought.
Yeah.
You know? And then we've got a turn everybody in the city into a lizard plot toward the end. I don't think it needed to go there.
Yeah.
I much more preferred this as, again, a more understated film about a dude that has daddy issues, basically.
You know, it seems like all the
stuff...
And
that deals with them in a superhero way. That's where the costume stuff comes in.
Yeah, it seems almost like if you take the big lizard plot away, and you make the lizard plot a little bit more personal, that seems almost in line with what Mark Webb would have liked this film to be. I don't know how much the big lizard superhero action stuff was Mark Webb's doing and how much was Sony saying, okay, we need to have a big, grandiose plot at the end. Because you would seem like, just based on this guy's sensibilities from what we've seen so far, he would want it to be a little bit more understated. And that's pretty indicative of Spider-Man as a concept, as you were saying before. It's very understated, not a big grandiose thing, like you had initially thought the film thought it was.
Yeah, right. A little convenient that he sees the mask that will inform his Spider-Man mask just after a guy says, "I've seen your face."
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey dude, you should have been wearing a mask. Oh look, how convenient.
I mean, I think it's a little convenient that there's enough police reports of similar looking dudes to that burglar that he's able to track down that many of them too. But
yeah, and again, while I love the idea, I guess I'll say this here. While I love the idea that he doesn't actually catch the burglar in this film,
mm-hmm.
I also am in the camp, and I've heard other people complain about this, that kind of wonders why he just sort of stops looking for him after the lizard stuff starts.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does sort of disappear, and not in like... The thing is, it should have called attention to it. All it had to do was have him grapple with, okay, do I go after Uncle Ben's killer or do I stop the lizard? But it really just is summarily dropped.
Right. It would have been really interesting if they went in the direction you were talking about, because when you think about it, it's sort of implied, but we're never really told, how they really connect together, because the thing with Uncle Ben's killer is him feeling responsible to seek vengeance for Uncle Ben.
That's right. And
he realizes somewhere along the line that we're not shown that that's not correct, and that he should just be responsible for his himself and the things that he's able to accomplish in the world.
It's just not really in the film.
Right, if it was clear and if that, it would have worked a lot better.
And in a film where I feel like we're very much in his head most of the time, that's disappointing.
Yes, it is. I agree. Some people have complained about this web-slinging scene being a little too similar, and the part where he was going around in the city streets without his costume on, with the mask and on the wall and climbing around the walls and stuff. There was a little too similar to the Raimi scenes, but I don't know. I thought the physicality of some of these scenes was really authentic, because when I was following the production of the film, they were saying that Garfield and the stuntmen researched parkour extensively before figuring out what Spider-Man would move like in this. to make it feel like something that was actually possible.
Yeah, and that makes those scenes, even if they are a little reminiscent of the Raimi scenes, kind of necessary.
Right, yeah, for sure.
And all that means is that Raimi was right to do it, and so was Webb.
Yeah, for sure.
And all, all that really tells me is that the film came out early enough after the Raimi movies that since they were still so much in our purview, it was a risk to do it this early.
Yeah.
And I think that is just frankly true. It was a risk to reboot this early. Yes. Was it a problem? Should they have waited? I don't know. In the theater, I felt like it was superfluous, like I said before. In the theater, I went, this is a good movie. I don't know why I need it. A few months later, sitting down, watching it again, really enjoyed it, and just thinking of it as another adaptation of this movie, of this series taken out, it's more, I like it better in a whole lot of ways, and I'm glad we got it. I mean, at this point, I really am glad we got it.
For sure. We just got the sort of completion of the costume and the web shooters here, and a lot of people had sort of said that they are disappointed that the web shooters weren't a bigger part of the film. How do you respond to that?
What else did you want to know about them?
That was sort of my point. Like, we show Peter Parker making the web shooters. We establish that he's good at science. He's doing science throughout the entirety of the film, even after this. I think the point of him being good at science is sort of, pushed on us enough throughout the film that I don't need an Iron Man-esque, 30-minute scene where he's building web shooters. It was like a 2-panel thing in the comics anyway.
Yeah, I don't feel like we need that either. There is one thing about the non-organic webbing that bothered me in this film.
Yeah,
and that's that he never runs out of it.
Yeah, that's exactly what bothered me. Why do it if you're not going to have him run out?
I guess because it kind of makes it seem somewhat more realistic. But look, he's got spider powers. I never thought the idea of organic webbing was any more or less realistic than any other power he has.
Right, for sure.
If you're gonna have it be a part of what he can do because he's a scientist, it needs to have limitations. We need maybe what some of the people that are talking about us not getting enough information about it. I think some of those people would have been more satiated, Dan, if they had simply given us those rules, like it disappears in an hour.
Yes.
Stuff like that. Tell us more about it. And I think some people also were disappointed that he didn't invent the webbing itself. So, he's very funny.
Yes,
and you buy that he is funny, that he has a sense of humor. It's not just whenever he puts the costume on. I mean, he's more jovial and he's more jokey when he puts the costume on because he can get away with it more. And you get the sense that it really is because he's wearing a mask that he's more confident.
Yeah, it's an inhibition thing. I think it gives him a little bit of ambiguity where he's not having to interact with people socially as himself, it's a totally different social situation for him.
All of these beats are hit from the comics, I think, in more effective ways than in the Raimi films. Not that they did them all really badly, but I just think that here it's a little bit more effective. The idea of the cops are chasing him. And also, cute stuff like, Aunt May calling him while he's wearing the costume.
Yes.
So that Spectacular Spider-Man all the time. I love that it's here.
Yes.
I still will always wonder how she doesn't notice that he's talking through a mask.
I know, right? Yeah, I love the little things like that. This movie's sort of strange because it tries to... I mean, I think it successfully grounds a lot of things of the Spider-Man universe really well. But it does some other things in a more comic book way than the Raimi films did.
Oh, like what?
Well, we were talking about him talking with Aunt May on the phone.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Like little things like that,
Yeah, that's true. Where it doesn't even address the weirdness of that.
Right.
I do still have the same problem, Dan, that I had with the Raimi costume.
Yeah.
And that is, there's no way he could afford to build that himself.
No.
Look at it.
I have to give them a little bit of credit. At least they showed that the lenses were made out of sunglasses and stuff like that, but you never really get the sense of where he got the material from and stuff and how expensive that is.
So many people made fun of the costume's texture before we saw the film of looking like a basketball that I think it's really ironic that there's so much basketball in this film.
Yeah.
It made me wonder if he didn't really build it out of basketball, Dan.
I know. The costume looks great on film, though. I love it on film.
Can I say that it looks horrible everywhere but in this movie?
Yeah.
That's just how I feel about it. I know other people like it. It is the worst costume I've ever seen for merchandising.
Oh,
the
yeah.
action figures look horrible. I've seen plush dolls. They look horrible. You can't do any... I saw a hoodie with that design where like the hoodie was supposed to look like his costume. You can't do anything with that thing outside of the color palette they used, and I am convinced it's all color palette.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be interesting to see how they do the second one, because Webb said that they're going with a more traditional comic book look for the suit in the second one. It's going to change, so...
Oh, weird.
Yeah, he said...
I wonder why they felt the need to do that.
I have a feeling it's Sony being worried that the purists and the fanboys aren't going to like it. I have a feeling that's why they cut so much of what Webb wanted to do with the parents out of this movie, too, because it was so different.
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't love the suit just, on paper.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not enough of a fanboy that's going to kill a movie for me.
Right.
I don't like the busyness of, and I've said this a lot of times, I don't like the busyness of what's going on with the middle of the Batsuit in Dark Knight, but that's one of my favorite movies.
Right, for sure.
Whatever. It looks okay in the context of the movie. It just doesn't look good anywhere else.
Right.
Hey, look, Dan! It's Norman Osborn's proxy!
Yeah, and I had heard that he was supposed to be Miles Warren in the original script, which is interesting.
Oh, they should have left that.
Wouldn't that have been cool, huh? Set up for the Jackal later on.
Alternatively, they could have made him Smythe.
Yeah, Smythe would have worked, too.
I want to see Smythe in this continuity. I think...
Play the video game.
No, I know, he's in the video game, but I want to see him in the movies.
Yeah, I would like to see him, too.
I think this universe would be great for Smythe. But I think, all of those doctor scientist guys work better in this than they would have in the Raimi films. Because, again, this movie is grounded much more in a science fiction kind of universe.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to see if this universe ever tries to go anywhere near Doc Ock. I don't think they will, just because of how much the portrayal from 2 is loved, I think they'll try to stay as far away from that as they can, but I think Doc Ock would be cool in this universe.
So, speaking of Doc Ock, I like how Norman Osborn's tentacles are stretched all the way across the plotting of this film.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And how he does not appear, but he affects things. And I like that, yes, Peter does play a part in what happens with the lizard, but the person most to blame besides Connors himself about what happens with Connors is Osborne.
And Osborne's to blame for Peter's entire life, too.
Yep.
He's already personally connected to Peter, and he hasn't even appeared on screen yet. That's brilliant.
I have complained on many occasions about scientists that are dumb enough to do human experimentation on themselves. And I love that this is one of those rare moments where I totally understand a scientist experimenting on himself, and in fact, before he does it, swears he won't.
Mm-hmm.
Says, no, I won't do that. That's a terrible idea. You can't make me do that.
Right.
And then the guy I like to call Norman Osborn's proxy says, well, now you're fired.
Yeah, and
you won't do human trials. I mean, like, he lets himself it's noble. He lets himself get fired because he won't experiment on people.
Right.
I mean, like, that makes him very sympathetic. Whether or not you think that his motivations for his crazy lizard plot toward the end make any sense, his motivations for becoming the lizard absolutely work.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Where he puts his hand up against the glass and imagines himself with two of them.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention. I just love that little scene there where
Osborne's stick looks like toothpaste. So look, he's desperate, Dan.
Yeah. Webb had actually made the analogy when he was doing interviews for the film that he had compared the lizard formula and how it's used in this film to a drug addiction for Connors, where he gets to his lowest point and he sort of uses that to get his fix and forget about the problems that he has currently.
That could have been played up more. I never got that from it.
It could have been, and I think there was stuff cut out that... Because there's little scenes in the film that we have here, the theatrical cut, where Connors sort of has the Norman Osborn Green Goblin thing going on, where he's talking to himself, and they almost played up like it's alternate personalities, but we don't really know if that's true. It happens in like one scene, and it's really weird.
I know, I thought so too.
And then it happens in a couple of the deleted scenes that they give us on the DVD. And I got the impression that even more was cut out, because there wasn't really anything in the deleted scenes that would have offended a studio for changing things so drastically or not liking it, you know what I mean? I don't think anyway. So, I just got the feeling that there was a lot more to that drug addiction and the thing than we actually got here. And I love how different, Gwen's family is from Peter's, and how much of an outcast he is even in this household too. It's great. You know,
yeah, that's right.
Immediately when Gwen Stacy's dad walks in and they're talking about his clothes, you set the precedent. Well, he's not ready for this.
And I just thought of this, but as much of a nuclear, wholesome kind of family as she's got, she too has another kind of dynamic that most of us will never have to face. Just like Peter does, where we talked about Peter's and his dynamic of his father leaving and then losing another father and how different that is from what most of us experience. But she's got that classic, my father goes to work every day and I don't know if he's going to come home. And most of us don't have to deal with that either.
Yeah.
So again, we're making multiple characters more sympathetic and more likable and more relatable by giving them somewhat familiar dynamics that we actually can't really relate to.
Right, and
great.
And it gives more the way that they have that thing about her father gives more credence to the reason why she likes Peter, I think, because what does Peter do? Every time there's a sign of trouble, he does the same thing that her father does. He puts on a costume instead of a badge and goes out and puts his life on the line. And she doesn't know he's going to come home. So people always talk about those complexes where you're searching for a mate that is similar to your mother or your father, depending on which sexual attraction you have.
Again, the film is about genetics.
Yes, there you go. Very, very thoughtful.
Yay, I love that the movie is actually even better talking about it, man.
Yeah,
because when we do these commentaries, I never know exactly where I'm going to come down on certain things. Like sometimes watching it with another person, will change your mind a little bit about certain things, and you've got a different sort of experience.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I'm pleased to say that so far it is a better movie the more I think about it.
Yeah, I put this movie up with two, probably tied as my favorite Spider-Man movies.
And it's weird because they're good for different reasons.
Yes, for sure. Everything that I like about Peter's character in this movie and the portrayal of him is not really into, but everything I love about the villain and the way that's handled into is not done here.
Yeah, it's like really it's almost plotted better, but not as well characterized.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of strange.
Yeah.
Maybe even, dare I say, a somewhat better paced film, although this movie has more legwork to do because it's got to do all the origin stuff too.
Yeah, definitely.
Now let me ask you this question, Dan. Having seen the film now, do you, and I think I know what you're going to say, but I'll ask it anyway.
Sure.
Do you think that since we already had, because this is what I thought before I saw the film, do you think that because we've already had a Spider-Man origin, even though this one is different and has his parents and everything, that they still probably should have done a film that didn't include the origin?
I'm one of those people that the Spider-Man origin is one of my favorite stories, period. So, and I think it's so integral to the character that if you're doing a new version of it, that you need to address it in some capacity. A lot of people complain about the origin. I'm one of those people that could see a different take on the origin, like, done every year and still find something to enjoy about the story.
Wow.
I like it that much. But I think it was worthwhile doing here because it had some different things to say. I mean, you could have done it in a way where the origin was just sort of, you give his motivation and then you go from there. That could have worked, but I sort of appreciated it here as a fan. Especially because they made the origin matter in so many more ways than it did in the Raimi movies. Like, I think this origin gives Peter a much better motivation for doing everything that he does than the Raimi films did, dare I say. I mean, the Raimi films are, for the most part, a straight-up adaptation of Amazing Fantasy 15 in the origin. But I think this one goes a little bit farther in making it click and connect a little bit better. I think that connective tissue that connects, like, everything in the film that we've complained about in certain aspects with the conveniences and stuff actually works for the origin sections of the film.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah. And having seen it, I'm much more okay with the fact that they did it that way.
Right.
I still have seen other versions of Spider-Man where they didn't have to start with it.
Right.
And I didn't feel like that had to be done, but I think it is an interesting case to make that, well, not only will we do Origin again, but we'll stretch it over 3 movies, but you won't really know what we're doing, so it's okay. It's kind of interesting. That's kind of interesting. It also doesn't waste time. I mean, it makes it a human story. You care about you care about these people, and so I'm not the whole way through going, okay, when do we get him in costume?
Right, yeah. Because I said this in the review I did for Who Reviews the Reviewers, where I reviewed the Spider-Man Omnibus. Like, I find the Peter Parker life bits in Spider-Man comics much more compelling as a reader than the action stuff with the villains. I just find the character so interesting. And
I think you were supposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the superhero stuff's a backdrop. I don't want to interrupt you, Dan, but I just have to say that this scene, I almost applauded in the theater.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I don't have to watch a whole film with more of the lame. I'm so sick of seeing the hero and the girlfriend go back and forth wondering if she knows.
Yeah.
I love a superhero film that will just have him come right out and tell her.
Yep, and that was a very ultimate thing to do here, and it's really interesting that they took it in a direction where she knows Peter's Spider-Man and she knows that he's somewhat not completely responsible, but somewhat responsible for her father's death. It's going to be interesting to see how they deal with that in the future films. I mean, we get a little bit of the fallout of it at the end, and we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that, yeah. Let me just go on record right now to say I don't think this film ends nearly as well as it begins.
No, but I think I don't want to say that this is happening for a fact or over-speculate or anything, but I thought it was an interesting thing. An article not too long ago came out and said that The Amazing Spider-Man is scheduled to film in London soon, which is sort of, and they said they're going to be using outdoor locations, which is sort of interesting because, Spider-Man's traditionally set in New York. But
right.
but in the comics, Gwen Stacy goes to England after her father dies.
Oh, wow.
And that's where she supposedly, according to Joe Quesada and editorial at Marvel, gave it up to Norman Osborn and had illegitimate children with him. So,
okay,
that's not going to happen in here.
Whoa. freaking no.
Yeah, never. They should never.
Whoa, I've never heard that.
Yeah, they did. They forced JMS to write that story. That was one of the things that happened pre One More Day, where the editorial shenanigans began with JMS. It was a really bad story. Made Gwen look like a very, very shallow character.
Yeah, and she's, what do you call it, dead?
Yeah.
I mean, she's not even around to defend herself.
Right, yeah, exactly. And here we get the lizard on the bridge here, again with the bridge motif.
So, kind of interesting that Spider-Man fights his first supervillain only really the second time out in costume.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
And I like, by the way, that Gwen, I meant to mention this earlier, that Gwen finds out that he's Spider-Man before Spider-Man's anything like a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really only been out once or twice, and you know, you've got Captain Stacy talking about it at the dinner table, so he's news. But like, I guess it's going to be funny to put it this way, but like, you know, superhero stories, the world comes to a point inevitably with all of them where the world revolves around the superhero.
Right.
You know, with all of them, and we're not there yet. And I like that Gwen gets to find out before the world revolves around Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it's the total opposite of the Raimi films, right? I mean, you have, in the Raimi films, it almost seems like Mary Jane is in love with Peter Parker because he's this big superhero that everyone knows and loves when they meet.
She likes him already. What a concept.
Yeah, exactly. She likes him for the person that he is. Which has always been, you know, Gwen and Peter's relationship, and Gwen and Mary Jane's relationship for that. I mean, not Gwen and Mary Jane, Peter and Mary Jane's relationship.
that'd be a different movie, Dan. Yeah. So this scene where Spider-Man saves this kid out of this car is really touching to me.
Yeah, it's
I
really,
like it a lot.
It's really touching, not only for the kid and the dad, but for Peter too, because you see him at the end of this scene, you see him watching, sort of in sorrow, the son and father embracing and, you know, loving each other, and he's just sort of looking at them and wondering what that feels like.
You know, I didn't think about that part of it. The part you're absolutely right. The part that gripped me the most is this bit right here where he says, "Put on the mask; it'll give you strength."
Yeah, and that's totally what it does for him.
Because that's what it does for him. And I always speculated that Raimi was trying that a little bit, but that it never really came into fruition. And the thing is, you had a Spider-Man in those movies that, as we always talk about, was you know, really, really insecure and freaking cried all the time. Yeah. And they needed to bring that to the forefront in those movies because it would have made a lot of sense that when he puts on the costume, he's not this blubbering idiot.
Right. Exactly.
And in this, he's not characterized as being as whiny, of course. And that comes right to the forefront, right there with that scene. Where,
yeah.
You know, put the mask on. It'll help.
And I was gonna say too about the crying, because I sort of forgot to bring it up when Garfield was playing it in the scenes, but I buy every time that he cries in these movies that it's warranted, and he would crack emotionally in that situation. Whereas Maguire, it was very rare that I bought it.
When Maguire did it, it seemed like no matter what the situation was, it was because his character was insecure and felt sorry for himself.
Right, exactly.
And here, it's never that. It's genuine. And I think, I'm sorry, it's just a better performance.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
A lot of it is just a better performance.
Mm-hmm.
If you had this guy or somebody like, of course you wouldn't have had this guy, it was 10 years earlier, but I mean, you know, if you had somebody like this guy playing even the exact same script, those would have been better movies.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And look, nothing against Maguire, I think he's a good actor, I just don't think he was right for that part.
Right, I think he was miscast as well, definitely. See, and this is where we get some of the weird stuff with Doc Connors where I'm not really sure what's going on with him.
He's in a sewer because the lizard was always in a sewer.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just weird. Me and Eric had talked about this in the review that we had done on the film off the cuff when it first came out after seeing it in the theater. This movie is very Ditco and very Bendis to me.
Wow, all at the same time, huh?
Yes, all at the same time. Just the way Peter's characterized, it's very clear when you're reading the early Spider-Mans, the characterization changes when Ditko leaves. It's not drastic, and it makes sense to take Peter in the direction that he goes when the characterization changes when Romita comes on. But Peter Parker is so much more of a social outcast under Ditko that's angry at society and the world around him. And that's totally the Peter Parker here. When Romita comes on, he's sort of at a place where he's a little bit more confident. He's been around for a while. He's in college. He's comfortable in his own skin a little bit more. And I don't know. I just thought it was a very Ditko way of approaching the characterization in this film. I don't know if you felt any of that. It's even with the understatedness of the film and the sort of groundedness of the action scenes, how dark, well, not dark in theme, but dark, at night, the swinging scenes around and stuff were.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have nothing to add.
I'm a big Ditko fan, so I was very pleased to see, things that Ditko brought to the character incorporated here, because a lot of people forget about Ditko, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I like that he, like everybody, he's layered. You're right that he does have that angry at the world thing, but it doesn't come out to the degree where like he's snapping at people,
right,
he's
exactly.
mad at any individuals. He just doesn't like that the universe gave him such a cold shoulder as a kid, and fair enough, right?
Exactly.
Still hate the thing with him throwing the football,
yes,
arbitrarily hitting I hate that. Anyway, my favorite thing, should I say that? Yeah, I think my favorite thing in the whole film is that Gwen Stacy is one of the most proactive female counterparts to a superhero I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
To the point where she's almost his sidekick in this film.
Yeah, it's great.
Freaking love it. Love it.
They make her likable. They make her proactive.
You believe everything she does because she's the top of her class. She's very smart, but also, you're right. I just thought of this. She doesn't have that angry at the world thing that Peter does because she's got a better family life. So she already has that confident and competent thing going on.
Right, exactly.
She gets the universe. She's ready for it.
Yeah, Emma Stone plays her with such a collected confidence. It's so charming, and may I say that, like, as a guy watching a film about a guy wanting to date a girl, I want to date that girl. Yeah, and
you know what I mean? I'm putting myself in his shoes. Absolutely, she's wonderful. She's stunning, and she's smart, and she's challenging, and she's great.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the key to making her death, when it eventually comes, matter.
Oh, yeah, because I know it's coming, and it will hurt my feelings.
Oh, yeah.
And you want it to, I believe that we have a Spider-Man film coming up that could potentially make me cry.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I'm anticipating it, and it might still make me cry.
Yeah, and if it does that, that's totally indicative of what I want a Spider-Man movie to be. That would be fantastic.
Because, man, I've read the issue where Gwen Stacy dies several times,
mm-hmm.
and it hurts every time.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Even reading it just out of context. I don't think I've ever had a more emotional reaction to anything, reading a comic book,
than that.
Than just simply the panel where you have the tiny word that says that her neck snaps.
Yeah. Oh.
My God, that's powerful.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Powerful.
And then
if they do a sound effect, I will die in the theater. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if they do any kind of sound where you hear her neck snap, I will die in the theater.
Oh, man. I can't wait to see how they handle that, especially since how...
I'm doing a bit of a fangasm here. I shouldn't be like that. I just but I don't know.
No,
See, I think it's a big deal for most Spider-Man fans that...
Oh, it is, man. Like, the fact that they made us care this much about Gwen just in the first film is, I want
to talk about the scene for a minute. Sure. I'm sorry, Dan. Because I'm afraid we're going to get past it.
No, go ahead.
Say this. In the theater, I hated Captain Stacy until this scene.
Yeah.
And I think that we were supposed to.
Yeah, I think so too.
He's here. This movie has such a good command of this sort of narrative, not the lizard stuff so much, but these interpersonal relationships, like we were talking about, where you're supposed to hate him because he's going after Spider-Man kind of blindly without really looking at the facts.
Yeah.
And he's characterized kind of like if J. Jonah Jameson was a cop.
I was just gonna say. Yeah, go ahead. I'll have more to say once you finish your point, sorry.
And no, that's okay. And then here, it looks like he just turns a blind eye to Peter when he says, look, Doc Connors is a lizard!
Yeah.
Get him! He's a lizard! He looks like he's being ignored, and Peter says, look, I get that you're ignoring me, but this is real. And he's leaving this room, and he doesn't think he's gonna look into it, and then he turns around, and he does the last thing you'd ever expect. He looks into it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Freaking great.
Yeah.
Great. Guess what? At the very moment that he looks at this guy Jimmy and says, give me everything we have on Connors, there he is. Now I like him.
Yeah, I definitely...
Or at least now I feel I can like him.
Yeah, I definitely got that same vibe from him, because I was used to the Captain Stacy... this is definitely a more ultimate take on Captain Stacy, for sure, but I kind of expected the... surrogate father thing from the 616 comics to come through with Captain Stacy here, where he was sort of a...
There's the bugle.
Oh, yeah. And
there's the bugle, and it's doing what you're used to the bugle always doing, which is making a big deal out of something that might not be real.
Right, yeah.
Love it.
Yeah,
sorry.
I love it too. But I was just going to say that...
Money shot.
Yes, McFarlane.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I love that. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, me too. But I was just going to say, we don't need J. Jonah Jameson in this movie, because we have a Peter Parker who's angry at society, wants to rebel against it. You give him an authority figure who gives him a reason to trust authority. It's sort of an eye-opening experience for him, and I really enjoyed that about Captain Stacy's character here. Because at first they make him out to be how Peter perceives authority figures, closed-minded, just old people, Because that's how some young people perceive older people,
So, Peter, I'm glad you have this much webbing and it never runs out. That's good.
I think it's a very cool idea that Peter's using the vibrations on the web like a real spider, though.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Get that camera! Get it! Get that camera! Why does he knock the camera over? Really, Doc Connors, he's just like, we gotta do this dramatic thing. He attacks the only other thing in the room. Get that camera! Sorry.
Yeah.
Spider-Man playing cell phone games.
But I'd never seen, like, a spider-related reason. Like, I haven't even seen, maybe it's in the comics somewhere, but I've never read a comic where he uses the webbing in the way that a spider would use it. I think that's really interesting.
Dude, I don't think I've ever seen that either.
That's
very cool.
Yeah.
When we first got trailers and things for this movie, again, I wasn't real sure I was going to love the idea of, like, having a light flash on the web shooters whenever web shoots out.
Yeah.
And it's used to wonderful cinema effects with regards to cinematography.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Down here in the sewers, I mean, like, by doing this much Spider-Man in the dark, you get to see things you don't usually get to see with Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, definitely.
By the way, you mentioned McFarlane. How McFarlane is this scene?
The number one cover with him on the web. That's what
precisely what I was thinking.
Yeah, and just did you notice the way he was holding his hands in the scene too? Like the way Garfield or whoever was in the scene.
Yes.
It just looked like a McFarlane drawing. Like, because the way Spider-Man holds his hands, I don't know if you ever noticed that it's in drawings and stuff, but it's very specific. Like, some of the hand gestures that he has, they're, like, very gawky and awkward, the way he holds them. And I just thought it was great that they captured that there.
Dan, I just noticed something I hadn't thought about before.
Sure.
He has his camera shooting pictures right there.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that before he ever, and of course I'm extrapolating, but you have to assume he'll be a photographer at the deal eventually. I love this notion that he uses that for a very specific reason, and then that will later inform a career choice.
Yeah.
Where he's like, now wait a minute, because he's interested in photography, and then it's like, oh wait a minute, I could use this to make money.
Yeah, and you have him set up the whole thing where he's taking pictures of, supervillains already too, right here.
Yeah, but he's not doing that to make money.
Right, exactly.
He's got a different reason for that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It is very cool.
All these great setup things that work fine for the purposes that they're there for. It's not like they're just there to set stuff up.
Right.
But then it's just like, in a very believable way, they inform what inevitably must happen. This is Spider-Man.
Oh, for sure.
Come in the lobby. She's very clever.
Yeah, she is.
Everything that comes out of her mouth.
Oh, me too.
She's clever, and she's witty, and she's thoughtful, and...
Yeah, Emma Stone is just fantastic as Gwen in this movie, and
I know I'm gushing over this girl in this movie, but I'm allowing myself to do that because the movie is worthy of it.
Yes, for sure.
It's going, love this girl, and I say, okay.
Yeah.
I love her. I'm supposed to, and it works.
And her and Garfield just have, I don't know if you know this, but they met on set and are dating in real life now.
They're dating? Oh, how cool.
Yeah, it is cool, huh? They just have, the fact that they had that good chemistry is very indicative of the final product.
That's so cool that they're dating.
Yeah, isn't it? Oh, I loved this gag in the theater. I was cracking up. Just people talking about everyday human stuff, and playing it up for humor and using it as a way to get Captain Stacy out of this scene.
Yeah, and it's not done in that gross Transformers way.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? Like, it's done in a classy sort of way. She's smart. She's clever. She uses what she has at her disposal.
For sure.
And, I mean, like, I don't mean that in a crass way.
I know what you mean. It's very indicative of what she was saying before when they were saying that Peter was, like, at the top of his class, and she was like, actually, he's second. She's actually that smart. I like that she's a intellectual challenge for Peter, like you were saying before. It's awesome.
Dan, I don't know if I should go this far, and I might make some people angry when I say this.
Yeah?
And looking at this again, and again, this is only my third time watching this, so I might feel differently about this later. I think their chemistry is so good that this is to Spider-Man what Reeve and Kidder was to Superman.
I'd agree with that.
It's that good.
I think it's that good too.
I don't mean that the performances are necessarily equal or anything. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, but very different sorts of things. But I mean, like, this for Spider-Man is what that was for Superman.
Yeah, I agree. I would say.
I don't know if I'm going to agree with me next week on that, but right now, looking at it,
I mean, as a Spider-Man fan, I think they nailed the chemistry of what these two characters should have, to justify saying that this is Peter Parker's true love. That this is the woman that he's going to be obsessed with, and her death is going to affect him for the rest of his life.
And how very different will Mary Jane be for him?
Oh, so different. She's going to be comic book Mary Jane, for sure. How cool would it be if she shows up at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2 and says, "Hey, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot"?
Well, I thought she was cast.
She is cast.
Yeah, but I'm with you. Wouldn't it be cool if it was at the very end?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. Or at the very least, if that's how she's brought in.
Yeah. That would make me so happy.
Although, I gotta tell you though, I don't think unless the scale of the film is big enough that it takes a lot of time, I mean that it goes over a long period of time, I don't think you'd want that if she dies in the same movie.
I think they're gonna save Goblin in the death for the third one. But we'll have to see what happens.
But for her to show up and say that, he'd have to not be dating Gwen.
Well,
right?
I suppose, unless they changed it around. I mean,
yeah, I don't want them to have some sort of, like, falling out and then he dates Mary Jane, like...
Well, I mean, he could be going through some rough patches with Gwen where they're separated for a little while, and then Mary Jane appears in his life and is this irresistible redhead that has an interest in him. And he has to sort of reconcile that.
Yeah, maybe so. No, maybe so.
We'll see.
I mean, I do like the idea of her being introduced before Gwen dies, certainly.
Right, yeah. So then you can have that connection between her and Peter already established when she dies.
You don't want her to just show up right after Gwen dies and it's like, oh, rebound girl.
Oh, yeah, because she's totally not that at all.
She's not that. She would never allow herself to be that.
No, never. Unless she, was, playing with a man's heart, because Mary Jane is very capable of doing that.
Yeah, but she's not evil enough to do that to
right.
a dude that just lost his girlfriend.
Right, yeah, for sure.
To a villain on a bridge.
Right.
Will you be okay with it if Gwen were to die by someone else's hand?
I kind of need her to be killed by the Goblin.
Oh wow, really? All right.
Especially in this universe where literally everything in Peter's life is dictated by what Norman Osborn does. I
like that we have a lizard in a lab coat.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a token thing because he wears it for 5 seconds and loses it.
Well, he wears it for a little bit in another scene too, and then takes it off.
Okay. So it's not just token.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I kind of wish that because he wears it for a few minutes in a scene and it looks fine. Like, why not just have him wear it in the whole movie? I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
It's weird.
I'm not real crazy about the lizard design.
Yeah,
I don't want to talk too much about it because that kind of thing can't make or break a film for me.
Right.
If the story's great, then I don't care. But I would have preferred a lizard snout. I mean, I would have preferred if we're calling this guy the lizard or a lizard, that maybe his face ought to look more like a lizard.
Yeah, I mean,
a little too human. I mean, maybe it makes sense thematically, given that he still has Doc Connor's personality, albeit a messed up version. I like that he's still got some intellect. That's cool.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with Webb about the design of the lizard, and he was saying that he chose to go with the snoutless face because he wanted to make a realistic case for the fact that the lizard would be able to speak. He said with a snout, you can't have a creature speak realistically. So that's why he went with the face and the more human mouth, so it would be, plausible for him to speak.
Yeah, that's a good point. He looks like Killer Croc, though.
He looks like Ditco Lizard to me, but...
Oh, okay. But I'm just saying, in the face, he looks like Croc.
Do you know what the Ditco Lizard face looks like? Have you seen it before?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks very similar to this to me, but...
That's just not the one I'm most used to, though.
Yeah, definitely. Because after Ditko, Ramita did the snouted one, and that's what we've had since, so...
I mean, my introduction to the lizard was the Fox series.
Yeah, and he snouted there, so yeah, I could see.
But this doing lizard this early hit me in a great place because that's what I was used to. The first big villain you get is Lizard. I mean, like, it was that way in the Fox cartoon. He was that early in the Spectacular cartoon.
Yeah, a lot of people actually had criticized when they were seeing the stuff for the film. Before I move on, I just want to talk about how comic book and cool this webbing scene is. And they sort of set up Gwen's neck being snapped by the webbing on the bridge here, where he webbed
I know.
The window.
Why'd you have to do that? But I just love it when he looks at her and says, I'm going to throw you out the window now.
Yeah, and she goes, what?
In the theater, I was like, really? That's hilarious.
Yeah, but I just loved the way he webbed him up there and crawled all over him. I thought it was really cool.
That reminds me of Vicky Vale in 89 Batman.
Yeah.
See that thing on my belt? Grab it.
Yeah. Oh, and there's Stanley.
I just love that he almost gets killed by a table.
Yeah. It's so great, isn't it?
That's one of his better cameos.
Oh, yeah, it is. He said himself that that's one of his favorites.
That is right up there with the truck in Thor for me.
Yes.
And nobody talks about that one. That is still kind of my favorite.
Yeah, I
really love the idea of the guy who used to write Thor is in a pickup truck trying to pull Thor's hammer out of the ground.
Yeah, JMS had tried to do it too. Did you notice him in the movie?
Oh, was that also JMS?
JMS was the other guy, yeah.
I don't know what JMS looks like. I assumed the other guy was probably somebody I knew. I was like that with the beginning of X3 with Claremont too. The first time I saw that, I didn't realize that was Claremont.
Oh, yeah.
It's like every time there's another old old guy in a scene with Stan Lee, it's a writer or an artist that I've never seen their face.
Yeah.
But man, if they're older, if they're in their 60s or 70s or 80s, you better believe that's going to be a Marvel writer or artist.
Yes. For sure.
I want to say this real quick in case I don't get a chance to to mention it later, because I was thinking about this last night and I wanted to say this.
Sure.
There are too many places in this movie where, this is a totally inappropriate time to say this, there are too many places in this movie where Connors is talking to Peter as the Lizard.
Yeah.
Where I just keep imagining Voldemort going, Harry Potter.
Oh, that'd be hilarious.
3 or 4 times he does that, and I'm always thinking, oh yeah, the Lizard knows that Peter Parker has this destiny as Spider-Man.
Funny if he did the Voldemort laugh too, where he goes,
Lizard's like, Spider-Man, do you know how you got that scar on your forehead? Then Spider-Man's like, I didn't realize I had a scar on my... Oh my god, you're right! Look at that scar on his forehead, Dan!
As of this scene.
Look at that!
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
That would have been really funny if it came out as a lightning bolt.
Now, wait a minute. Did he upload that video post knocking the camera to the ground?
Yes, of course he did.
That is a durable camera.
Oh.
Everybody, go look at that scene, pause it, find out what the make of that camera is, and buy one. Because whatever that is, this is the best commercial ever for it.
I wonder if it's product placement. Probably not.
Can you imagine that commercial? Will survive lizard attack.
I guarantee it.
Survive giant lizard attack. Get that camera! Get it!
I mean, I'd buy it.
It looks a little bit like my camera.
Oh, yeah. Your camera's really nice.
I love my camera.
And there is the lizard's eyes, which look really good. I think the lizard looked really good in this movie.
That was neat. Yeah, he does. He's not too CG looking. I like him.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Whatever qualms we may have about the design aside, I think the CGI on him is really, really good.
Oh, there's his coat again. No,
yeah.
I get to see it some.
Yeah. And then he takes it off right after this, which I'm like, oh.
Yeah, well, it's getting ripped to freaking shreds. I think he takes it off because it's falling off him anyway.
I know, but I love the jacket. See,
you police had a chance to kill him dead.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't take it. And now you're all going to become Ninja Turtles.
They do kind of look like Ninja Turtles, don't they?
Well, I don't think they look like Ninja Turtles. I just think that his canister looks like a TGRI can.
Oh, yeah, it does. I mean, I could see someone making a case for the fact that if you put a mask on them, they could kind of look like Ninja Turtles.
He's like, this coat does not fit anymore.
Let's make a mask of the white Ninja Turtle.
Well, the good news is they've kept this machine all plugged in and ready to go on the off chance that somebody decides it's okay that it can be weaponized. That's never gonna change. So, this movie, I don't want to say it's degenerated.
Yeah.
But it has definitely turned more into goofy comic book fare.
Yeah, it's almost like...
At this point.
Yeah, it's almost like the third act is remembering that it's a superhero movie.
Totally is. I mean, with all this, like, at night, street level things being blown up and lizards walking around and stuff, God, I'm ready for, like, General Zod to walk out on the street, or, like, blowing up billboards and stuff. Like, kneel before Osborne!
Oh, you better say that.
I have heard that apparently in Man of Steel, Zod is not going to ever use his catchphrase.
That's disappointing.
It is disappointing. I hope that's a rumor that's not true. Or that I love him enough that I won't care. But you better believe that at some point I will yell that in the theater.
Oh, I will too.
I think we all will tick people off by going, oh, shot!
Yes.
So that shot where he's in that spotlight and shoots toward the camera. Boy, you've been waiting the whole movie for something that looks like that for Spider-Man.
Oh yeah. The way Spider-Man moves when he's swinging, finally here where he's, pretty good with his powers. Webb was talking about how he looked at Bagley art a lot.
Oh, cool.
And that sort of informed the poses he was doing when he was in the air and stuff. There's a pose specifically, I don't remember which scene it's in, but I think it's a little bit later on where he jumps into the air and raises his arms like over his head, and I was like, that is so Bagley.
You know what I'm gonna say, right?
What? Oh yeah, yellow lines.
Well, it's not close enough to source material. Because there's no yellow lines in the background. But I guess we don't have Venom in this, so.
Oh, that would have been fantastic. Just like for fan service, there's just like a point where he jumps and just the background's yellow lines.
It just suddenly turns into like an anime. It's like all of a sudden the background is just like a painted background. And you're like, well, where did the background go?
It's painted by Alex Ross.
Once again, we are messing with audiences' expectations.
Oh yeah.
So you think because you've seen other superhero films, and frankly because you've seen other Spider-Man films,
yeah.
that he's going to get through this whole scene with his mask off, and Captain Stacy's never going to figure out that he's Peter Parker.
That's what I thought, and I was like, ooh, I'm going to have a problem with this if that happens.
Better than that, friends.
And I love the way he plays this, where he's just panicking.
Yeah, it's great. Oh, it's great.
Oh. He's not even... He's just scared at this point. You can just see him shaking. Oh, his performance is so good. See, I'm just caught up in this scene right now.
No. I said that earlier about Reeve and Kidder. I'm going to even go that far just for him by himself.
Oh, yeah.
He's the Reeve for Spider-Man.
He is.
You will never, mark my words, if that's ever recast, you will never see anybody do it this well again.
Oh, I agree. Garfield is Peter Parker to me.
I will eat a Spider-Man mask if I am wrong. Like 50 or however old I am if that ever happens. But man, you will never see it. And you know what I hope?
What?
I hope these films continue to stay good enough that we can have maybe a slightly older Peter Parker. I mean, the great thing about Spider-Man is that there's enough source material where he gets older that you don't have to recast him because he gets too old.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That would be awesome if we got, like, Married to Mary Jane, adult Andrew Garfield, Peter Parker. How cool would that be?
I want it.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, 90s Spider-Man. Okay, this is the worst part of the whole soundtrack for me.
Yeah, I really...
This goofy, dissonant, high-pitched chord played on it. Stop it! So annoying! I get it. She's hiding. He's a giant lizard. It's kind of a horror scene. Take all the soundtrack out. No music in the scene. More gripping, more scary.
Yeah, you know what this scene reminds me of? It reminds me of that scene from Jurassic Park where the two kids are hiding in the kitchen from the raptors.
He needs to smash his face up against something reflective.
Yeah.
It's like Lizard has gotten that dumb. That is a little Jurassic Park, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I thought of when I was watching this, like with the music, everything. I was like, huh.
There are things that it's very easy to forget that we want to remember while we're watching scenes like this, which is she just hit her former boss with fire in the...
That is very true.
Forget things like that, you know? This is not just a giant lizard. This is a giant lizard that's connected to everything.
Yeah.
Whether it's believably plotted together or not, yeah. But...
And now we have since Spider-Man 3, we have this trend of the big action scene is always on TV, and we get the perspective of someone watching it. But it makes sense here for Aunt May to be watching it, and I like that little nod, because that's something she used to do in the comics all the time, is watch Spider-Man on TV and be like, Peter, look how bad he is. And that was her way of being like, hey, Peter, you probably shouldn't be Spider-Man, because she knew the whole time.
Yeah. What we need to recall is that they are kind of playing a little bit with does she know or does she not. However, I think it's pretty evident that she does.
Yeah, agree.
Because they give us that scene there where she's watching the news and seeing Spider-Man, and a couple hours later, he's going to come home all brutalized after conveniently this is all over with and fixed.
Oh, yeah.
Spider-Man. Because when he I guess we're not there yet, obviously, but when he gets home, before, she wanted to know where he was. She kept yelling at him, where are you? Where were you?
And who's doing this to you?
Who's doing this to you? You can't keep these kinds of secrets. He comes home after all of this, more brutalized than she's ever seen him. It's okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, she definitely knows.
The crane goofy?
I thought it was goofy. Even in the theater watching it, I thought it was a little goofy. Do you think it's just as, or if not, more goofy than the scene where everyone starts throwing trash at the goblin on the bridge in Spider-Man 1?
Can I go on record and disagree with you?
No, I'm asking you if you think it's more or less goofy.
I don't think it's goofy at all.
Oh, you don't think it's goofy?
I like it because it's the guy whose son he saved on the bridge.
Yeah, I think it works a little bit better than the Spider-Man 1 scene, but I don't know. I just think it's a little goofy. Just because.
Why? I mean, I don't.
A line of cranes in the middle of New York.
I think it's not likely they could have gotten that together that fast.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the idea is cool, in my mind.
Yeah, and Spider-Man inspiring people is cool.
Yeah, I like that. I think that it's always a big deal because it's New York, and New York has this reputation for people don't look out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's kind of rude to each other on the street and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I've always heard from New Yorkers, is that, like, don't talk to people because everybody's a jerk.
How cool is it that is even sort of put into Peter's characterization here?
It is.
How cool is that?
You're right. This feels like New York to me.
Yeah, it does. It feels like what street level New York should feel like in real life.
It feels bigger than it did in the other movies.
Yeah.
Just looking at it here, look at the scale of the city. It looks bigger.
Yeah, the buildings were a lot smaller in the Raimi films in parts. Like, I'm thinking of specifically, like when he lands on stuff, just some of the buildings are lower.
Yeah, this is a playground.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, it doesn't look like he's dominating the city.
Yeah, and I love the design of the Oscorp Tower. I forgot to sort of mention that before when it was we were shown a big shot of it, but I just thought of it as he's climbing up here. I just think it looks awesome.
Yeah.
And the scene with Gwen and Captain Stacy is great. Love it. See, he's sort of trying to protect his daughter and let her, you know, help out in some sort of ways at the same time. It's you can tell it's sort of weighing on him, that decision. You know, when is it time to let your kids go and make their own choices and do things for themselves? Because he seems like a very protective father. Well, he doesn't seem like it based on the information we get later on in his death scene. We know that.
And I love that he's thinking, again, he could have very easily been a two-dimensional character. By the end, I feel like he's about as real as everybody else, though we don't get as much time with him.
Right.
And then he kind of sees Spider-Man as a fellow cop by the end. That's really great.
What do you think about the point of view scenes? Because we hadn't really talked about those, and they're pretty prominent in the third act here.
I love it.
Yeah, I think they're awesome.
I have heard that they were done that way mostly for the sake of 3D and that it looks amazing in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course I don't know, but, I think it's cool just because it's something different we haven't seen before in live action Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I didn't know was possible to make look real.
Yeah.
So it feels like we're pushing an envelope and we're creating new things and we're doing something new. Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, me too. I would have never thought that Webb would have been able to pull that off as much as he does in this film and have it not be cheesy.
And that he does it as often as he does.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's a risky move. This movie's not cutting corners and it's not being safe. No. It is a bold film.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it.
And I think it used to be bolder.
Oh yeah, me too.
May I say? Oh! Here he is. This is the scene where I was like, Harry Potter, get him!
I love that Captain Stacy just comes in with a shotgun here. For some reason, I think that suits his character.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's also, I didn't think about this either. It's nice that the police do things other than just chase Spider-Man.
Yes.
Because, they gotta be around to help stop the giant lizard, too.
Yeah.
It's not like they knew we were gonna have a superhero, and in fact, they don't see him that way. They want him off the streets, too.
Right, and here's Peter learning that when he was talking with Captain Stacy before, he was saying that Spider-Man has to do the things that the cops can't do. And here's Captain Stacy showing Peter that, well, maybe the cops are capable of a little bit more than he originally thought they were.
Yeah, because he says, what can't do?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What can't we do?
Yeah.
What do you mean? And ultimately, all Spider-Man... Well, the thing is, Peter doesn't really have a case for I am necessary beyond inspiring people.
Right.
I mean, the cops could have handled this problem if it weren't for the science part.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Like, if it was just the lizard wreaking havoc,
mm-hmm.
Stacy could have taken care of that.
Yeah. For sure.
The part that Peter Parker is necessary for is the part that he caused.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that about it.
Without him, you wouldn't have had without him and his parents both, you wouldn't have had the possibility of all this lizard stuff dropping on the city. That's the part he's got to take care of.
Right. I love that the supervillains here, at least this one, I can't speak about the future films, but I love that the supervillains are created by the hero, and you're not even thinking about how interconnected that is and how sort of convenient it is. They pull it off in a convincing way. I really like that about it, because we always talk about the idea in superhero fiction. Do the supervillains show up because of the superhero showing up? Are they a source of evil that's around to combat this fantastic force of good that showed up?
Yeah, are the superheroes just making the world worse by existing?
Right, exactly.
Because they're solving these problems, but what if they had a hand in them? And sometimes just their very existence, the idea that well, you had this with Begins in Dark Knight, mm-hmm. the idea of theatricality breeds more theatricality.
Right, exactly.
Escalation. And I love that finally one of these gets this right with Spider-Man, where the idea of Spider-Man creating his own villains was always one of the biggest parts of his character.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And that was one of the things that, despite all of its flaws, the 90s show really got right.
Yes, it did.
Or at least it sure talked about it a lot, the idea that he creates his villains. The Raimi films never touched on it.
No, they didn't, did they?
They don't deal with it.
That's very true.
At all. It's not there, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about it right now.
Yeah.
So, this is a pretty standard death scene.
Yeah, it is. And this is where we see Captain Stacy trying to be protective of his daughter, before he dies. You said before, seeing Peter as a fellow cop, and he knows that anyone entering into a relationship with a cop has as much risk for being hurt as the person that's actually doing the job. He's telling him that he'll make enemies and stuff. And this is sort of where my problems with the ending begin. Where Peter agrees to this. I mean, what else would he have said to the dying wish of his girlfriend's dad?
Here's the thing, though. He doesn't say anything. I mean, well, he nods and he kind of says okay, but I mean, like, he doesn't come right out and really say anything.
I suppose, but
I guess you're right. I mean, he acknowledges it. I guess it's just, I don't know, he's so subtle, and frankly, I'm not used to Spider-Man on-screen live action being this subtle, so I guess you're right.
Yeah.
I gotta say this real quick, sorry, before you go on, I like that Captain Stacy doesn't tell Peter to stay away from Gwen.
Yeah.
He, without saying it, is really saying, I respect you, and I'm not telling you not to date her, but if you're going to be Spider-Man, you can't.
Right, yeah. And that...
So where exactly does the problem begin? You don't have a problem with the fact that Stacy said that, but you don't like that Peter agrees to it?
I don't like that Peter agrees to that, and then goes back on that promise. It's completely irresponsible.
I agree with you. I do not know what that line at the end is supposed to mean. I don't get it. When she says don't make promises you can't keep, and the teacher, and then he behind Gwen says, but those are the best kind. What?
Yeah.
What? I don't get it. I mean, like, I feel like it's just kind of...
I mean, when he says that, I can maybe see him saying that the promise he can't keep is living up to every responsibility that he commits to, but that's... I don't know if I like that.
or like maybe it's too open for interpretation, you know?
Yeah. I
love the way he smiles at Aunt May there.
I love how he played Captain Stacy's death scene too, because it's totally contrary to the way he played Uncle Ben's death scene.
Oh, great point.
The Uncle Ben one was scared, confused, disoriented, and the Captain Stacy one was more haunting and angry.
I will go as far as to say, and this is a broad interpretation, let me say, I think that they are perhaps in the scene, Peter and May, even with this embrace they have, acknowledging, both of them, that he's Spider-Man.
That's a good point.
I think so. I don't think it's just that she's smart enough to know. I think maybe there's this unspoken thing between those two characters, where they're both like, we're not going to talk about this, and we'll play things like we don't know, but I just came back after this giant catastrophe and look at the shape I'm in. That's a nice blend of the Ultimate and the 616 takes on it, if they go in that direction. It's more believable to me. Yeah, me too. I love that. We'll see how they handle it later. I have interpreted things in movies that wrong before, where the sequel comes back, and clearly that wasn't what the director had in mind. But I love that hat. Me too. And we sort of have Gwen here in a place where she's sort of on Peter's level, which is interesting. That family that we were talking about. Oh, good point. Yeah, they now have parallel backgrounds to a degree. Yeah, it's really interesting the way that they both have mother figures that are still alive, but they've lost their fathers. Yeah, exactly. And they have a similar father figure too, because Captain Stacy was sort of that. Well, not as heavily as I think they believe it was. There definitely was some sort of mentoring father-son thing going on with Captain Stacy and Peter in some of the scenes, at least. And I love the way Emma Stone plays this scene too. See, and we talk a lot about in the previous Spider-Man films about not communication, and communication being one of the problems in that relationship. Yes. Peter doesn't tell Gwen about the promise here, and I buy that he's not communicating with her about that for valid reasons. Okay, explain them. Why exactly is it valid? Because here's the thing. She knows he's Spider-Man. Yeah. And I'm not real sure exactly why he has to keep that from her, because wouldn't it be easy? Here's the thing. Wouldn't it be easier for him to stay away from her if he came out and said, this is why I can't be with you?
Maybe he doesn't want her to blame her father for the breaking up of them, and not to tarnish the image of him for her.
Yeah.
That's how I took it. But
Yes. Okay. Yeah, you win. Sure. I didn't think of that. Yes. Absolutely. And you're right. I don't think they need to come out and tell us that.
Right.
No, you're right. I didn't think of it, but that's the humane thing to do. Yeah.
It's just another example of them doing something from the Raimi films and doing it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Good line.
Such a smart movie.
Good line.
Yeah.
I just, like, Aunt May is so, like, in this, she just comes right out and says whatever's on her mind.
Exactly. I love that about her.
I like that she's not as eloquent as the previous version. I like that this is not an Aunt May that knows just what to say all the time. The previous Aunt May, and it was old school comic book Aunt May. I'm not saying that I have a problem with it, but for this universe, it works. This works. I like that like she's not unwise, but she doesn't have like these token platitudes. I don't want to say platitudes because that's not fair to the previous version, but you know what I mean? Where like she's got these like greeting card explanations for how to fix everything in Peter's life, at every degree of problem.
Yeah.
And they have human scenes together, but I don't know. It's just here. This woman feels more real to me in this universe.
Yeah, and
the way she handles that. I'm not explaining myself well.
Oh, no, I understand completely what you mean. She's a little bit more of a...
Oh, I love that old picture of Charlie Sheen there.
Oh, yeah, I love
great.
that too. I was just going to say that...
I'm sorry, Charlie Sheen. Martin Sheen.
Yeah, the Aunt May in this is... I totally buy her marrying that kind of guy, too.
Oh, yeah.
Just the way her personality is.
Now, let's take a look for a moment at this message that he leaves and that we finally get to hear at the end, which, by the way, what a great payoff for sitting through this movie. What a wonderful payoff. This message he leaves, that is a little bit like the old school Aunt May thing where he knows just what to say and it's very poetic. Mm-hmm. But he leaves it to him in an answering machine message, so he could have, like, sat around and thought about it for a while.
Right, exactly.
You know? That sounds rehearsed and it's believable.
Yeah.
He couldn't have sat down with Spider. That is not a character who would have come up with great power comes great responsibility off the top of his head.
Oh, no. And some people complain about him not coming out and saying it.
I'm glad
it worked for this characterization.
In this world is too grounded for that. Well, I don't know if the world is. I just mean, like, people talk more like people in this.
Yeah.
I always had a problem with great power comes great responsibility. Not as a message, but just like, what is Ben talking about? I mean, like, he doesn't know that Peter has power. You know, what power is he talking about? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I guess just the idea that I believe someday you'll be a great man, but, like, he never says it in that context. He just kind of out of context says that.
I think what he means is everybody has some degree of power over things in their life, you know? Everybody's going to have some power over another person in their life, and there's going to be a situation when that happens in any person's life. And whether you use that power for good ends or take advantage of it is who defines you as a person. I think that's what he's saying.
Oh my God, I'm sorry, I just realized something.
Yeah, sure.
I just had a freaking epiphany. Whoa, that's crazy. Okay, this music we're hearing right here.
Yeah.
It's almost note for note the main theme at the end of Search for Spock.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Oh, and I want to talk about something when we get to the shot at the end, because it has Mark Webb confirmed that there's an Easter egg in the last shot of the film that hints at a future villain, and I know who it is. There's Mysterio in the clouds.
That's so comic book!
There's Mysterio in the clouds.
In the cloud? Really?
Yeah, see the fishbowl head in the clouds?
Oh, that's awesome!
Yeah.
Dude, just that pose at the end,
Yeah.
That always hits me. Like, just the color scheme and stuff.
Oh, it's so cool, isn't it?
It's still at night, but it's a little brighter, and it feels like old school Spider-Man. Anyway, I have to mention this real quick, though.
Sure.
One of the reasons I didn't care for the score, I know I'm talking about this music thing a lot.
Yeah.
Is because it didn't sound like a superhero score to me. It sounded like something else. And I kept going, where have I heard that note progression before? And now that I went and wikied it earlier and found out that he wrote Search for Spock, he just rewrote Search for Spock.
Maybe they got him because of the heavy science fiction angle in this movie. Maybe that's what they were going for when they hired him.
Wow, I'm going to look at this in a whole different way now, because I keep saying, well, it's a superhero film, but it's not a superhero film, and that's one of the things that works about it, is that, like, it turns into a superhero film, and maybe the third act is a little bit too comic book, considering what the first two acts are. Mm-hmm. But then, while I'm praising it for being kind of more of a science fiction and also character thing, I'm also complaining because the soundtrack isn't superhero enough. You got freaking James Horner doing Search for Spock. Maybe I'm wrong to a degree. Although, I gotta say, I still think that the music is far too freaking jovial when he's fighting in the school. Oh my god.
Yeah. Oh, and here we get the credits scene that was in the trailers.
Yeah, so weird.
It's so weird.
I hate that. So a lot of people think that, or a lot of people thought, at least, maybe they don't now, that because of the lightning thing, that this is supposed to be Electro.
I think it still could be Electro, and they just didn't know who they were going to cast at the time, and that's who it was supposed to be. It's been confirmed, by the way, that Jamie Foxx is in the film. Right. Before he was in talks, but now they've come out and officially said he's going to be in the movie as Electro. So I read a little character description of what they're going to be doing with him, and it sounds interesting, and it sounds like they're going to parallel with him with Peter quite a bit. So, wow. It sounds like it should turn out to be pretty good.
Wouldn't it be weird, though, if that is Electro, and then Jamie Foxx comes in and does that voice?
That would be really weird. See, I had always assumed that it would, like, before that Fonz had come out and said that it wasn't Osborne. I had just assumed it was him because it was an old dude. I figured that Osborne, we never saw him because he was embarrassed by his looks and stuff.
Yeah, I had hoped it wasn't Osborne because I don't mean to be a purist, but I kind of want something closer to the, clean-cut, suit-wearing kind of Osborne we're used to.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want a homeless guy who's rich, like...
Yeah.
Or at least a guy, a guy who looks all frazzled like that.
Wouldn't it be interesting, though, if Norman Osborn was old and Harry Osborn, his dad, is old just like Uncle Ben was with Peter?
Yeah, I'd like that.
I think that would be an interesting parallel. And they cast Harry in the second one already. Did you hear who it was?
Yeah, and I did. And that's a great pick.
I don't know much about him. I was talking to...
Did you see Chronicle?
No, I didn't.
Oh, see Chronicle, and you will love that pick.
Oh, okay. Shades told me that he didn't like it. Interestingly enough, he said it was a terrible pick. So.
Oh well, I think it's great.
Well, I don't know either way. But.
Well, let me just say that, Harry Osborn needs to, at some point, if they keep making these, go bad, and Chronicle, not to give anything away, is about a guy with superpowers who goes bad, and he's supremely scary evil by the end. I think he's a great pick for Harry Osborn. Yeah. I think that he'll do a really good job of playing... I think that's... I know he's from Chronicle. I think it's
that guy. It is. Yeah, Kai.
I think that we've got a guy who can play those different levels, where he kind of turns into that monster.
Well, that excites me because Harry Osborn is one of, if not my favorite, Spider-Man supporting cast members. So,
I'm sorry. See Chronicle.
Yeah, I really should.
That film is wonderful, and it's a very unconventional superhero film.
Cool.
Not even superhero, really.
Yeah.
Was flying around, messing up things. It's a great movie.
So now, before the credits run out, how do you fall down in this film now that we've watched it again? You seem to enjoy it a lot more than you did last time.
Boy, I have this horrible feeling that I'm just going to love this thing more and more every time I see it. I love these characters. I want to see them more. I don't finish this going, well, that was kind of a fun combo movie, but I sure wish the people weren't cookie cutter like I did with the original Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I think that it's got some plot issues.
Yeah.
I think that it's got some conveniences to get the ball rolling. But overall, it's a better film than I gave it credit for.
I agree with everything you said, and now that you like it a lot more, I'm really excited to see and really hopeful that the sequel is great.
I'm worried about it.
You think so?
I'm worried because Sony, I don't think, knew what they were getting when they got Webb.
Mm-hmm.
And they're letting him do the sequel, but they've changed the writing staff, and I think they're going to have some giant mandates on what they'll let him do with the sequel, and I think that there is my big fear, of course, is that they're going to make him take the focus away from those interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. I'm worried about it.
We'll have to see. I mean, Webb came out and said that he's really excited about the script and really even more excited about it than the first movie, so...
Well, that's great.
We'll have to see. I
want to be excited about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But after this experience, watching it last night and now watching it with you, and dare I say I enjoyed it even more this time as we kind of dissected and got into it a little bit. Boy, I want to do one of these before a rewind every time now. You know, yeah. I feel like I kind of know what I want to talk about at this point. I sort of am afraid that they're going to make it not as good of a film, and that I'm not going to like this one as much, you know? I don't want that to happen.
I mean, like we were talking about before, even if Webb is excited about the script, that doesn't mean that Sony can't go in and cut things and change things like they did with this movie, so
right.
We'll have to see. I'm very hopeful, though. I really want the sequel to be good. Because this movie's a setup movie, right? Everything that will make this franchise good hinges on the sequel.
Oh, absolutely it does. Yeah, we've got unanswered questions here.
Oh, so many.
Well, Dan, we're getting toward the end of the credits here. Thanks so much for doing this with me.
Oh, no problem. I had a great time. This was such a fun movie to watch and talk about.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we did this. I was a little on the fence about whether or not we should do one this early, and I'm really glad we did it. I had a blast.
Oh, awesome.
With you.
I'm glad I didn't discourage you from doing this ever again.
I wish. So now we've done all 4 Spider-Man films that have been produced. I wish we had more to do, Dan. I'm a little sad that it's over.
Me too.
And that's not to say that this is the last commentary we'll do together. I'm sure you and I will find other things we'd like to watch together that aren't Spider-Man. But
yeah. Have you done a commentary on like Daredevil director's cut or anything?
No, but Vince has dibs on it.
Oh, okay.
We did the first one together.
Oh, true.
I mean, the first one, yeah, because they're sequels now. Did the not so good version together, and I think he kind of wants to do that one.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
If he bows out, I'll certainly be happy to put you on it.
I was just curious about what other stuff you had in the.
Real talk. I think you and I should definitely knock out some of the Marvel Studios films, probably.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Everybody, thanks so much for listening to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. We sure hope you enjoyed this. We had a lot of fun making it. And we'll be back with you again, hopefully next week or the week after, with another podcast or podcast commentary. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.